I am a beta, having maintained my position as the alpha secretary for 5 years, unaffected by pheromones. Others often label me as an anomaly. Yet, I am acutely aware that this is merely due to the absence of the protagonist Omega in the narrative. When the protagonist Omega eventually made their entrance, I promptly submitted my resignation and made my escape. Little did I anticipate that merely 3 days after returning home, the protagonist Alpha would seek me out. In the throes of their sensitivity period, the Alpha lost all semblance of control and confined me to the attic. My attempts to resist resulted in several bite marks on the nape of my neck. In a hushed, coaxing tone, he murmured, "Do you know, darling? Disobedient betas may be bullied into becoming omegas." Ha. The breathy exhalation on the other end of the phone lingered, provoking an inexplicable itch in my ears. I hastily shook my head and inquired, "Are you well, Mr. Pei? Do you need me to?" Before I could finish my sentence, Pei Yunqing interrupted, "Ling in, room 2203 at the Jiha Hotel. Bring the new suppressants. Every month, male alphas with an omega endure a few challenging days, not to mention my boss, who has lived a life of asceticism for the past 5 years." I understood immediately. "Understood, Mr. Pei. I will be there in 10 minutes. After hanging up, I quickly retrieved the alpha suppressants I kept on hand and stuffed them into my bag as I made my way to the parking lot. Upon reaching the door of room 2203, my eyelids twitched ominously. Yet, before I could react, the door swung open, and a scorching hand yanked me inside. The room was enveloped in darkness, save for the faint glow of an unextinguished cigarette but in the distance. To say it was unsettling would be an understatement. I instinctively recoiled. However, in the next instant, the hand gripping my wrist tightened once more, and before I could process it, I found myself colliding with Pei Yunqing's chest. As if that were not enough, my face had fortuitously made contact with his. A jolt of realization surged through me, and I instinctively attempted to retreat. Yet, despite my struggles, I could only manage to create a distance of a mere finger's breadth. A glance down revealed the source of the impediment. His hands were firmly clasped around my waist. They were hot to the touch, but I suddenly came to my senses. Pei Yunqing was still in his sensitivity period, a common symptom being an elevated body temperature. At this rate, one might as well be delirious from the heat. My heart raced with concern as I quickly produced the suppressants. "Mr. Pei, the new suppressants. Would you like me to assist you with the injection?" Pei Yunqing remained silent, shrouded in darkness, rendering his expression indiscernible. Growing increasingly anxious, I patted his arm gently. In response, he spun me around in place. Dazed, I watched as my surroundings shifted, and just as I was about to voice my confusion, a sharp pain pricked the nape of my neck. Oh no, Pei Yunqing has mistaken me for an omega. But I am merely a passerby beta, unwilling to be a pawn in the dynamic between him and the protagonist Omega. Without hesitation, I began to struggle. Yet the arm around my waist remained unwavering. Panic surged within me. "President Pei, please see clearly. I am Ling and just an assistant, not your." The sharp pain at the back of my neck faded, and my hands were suddenly freed. Pei Yunqing's deep voice carried a hint of grievance. "Apologies, the sensitive period has left me dazed. Please hand me the suppressants." I bit my lip and handed him the suppressants. I intended to inquire if he needed assistance with the injection, but he preempted me. "Ling in, could you do me a favor?" As soon as he spoke, the lights in the room illuminated. Before me stood Pei Yunqing, his shirt buttons undone, with only the last 2 still valiantly fulfilling their duty. The chiseled contours of his 8-pack abs compelled me to avert my gaze immediately. Truly, the situation was akin to a pack of dogs. I inhaled deeply and asked, "What else does President Pei require of me?" Pei Yunqing opened his arms. "Could I have a hug? I have no way to administer the suppressants myself. Could you provide me with some psychological comfort?" The towering man, slumped with drooping shoulders and downcast eyes, sat at the edge of the bed, resembling a forsaken stray dog. This aligned perfectly with the psychological fragility discussed in our biology classes about sensitive periods. However, his words were not to be trusted, especially with Pei Yunqing's chosen destiny looming near. "I will grant you an additional month's salary." I struggled to suppress my heart's flutter. "President Pei, that would be inappropriate." Pei Yunqing's aura darkened further. My heart skipped a beat at the sight. Silently, he rolled up his sleeves, exposing his azure veins. "It's troublesome." With a soft sigh, I unwrapped the suppressants, swiftly disinfected, and administered the injection into his vein. After tidying up the remnants, I asked Pei Yunqing, "President Pei, should I call a driver to take you home?" Pei Yunqing always spent his sensitive periods at home. Even if an episode struck unexpectedly, he would immediately return home, without exception for 5 years. I anticipated a definitive affirmation, Yet Pei Yunqing shook his head. Not going back. I'll stay here. My instincts warned me that something was amiss. However, this was not a matter for a subordinate to concern herself with. I nodded. Then I will order food for you and report important work through WeChat. Having said this, I turned to leave. However, as I pivoted, the hem of my clothing was snagged by Pei Yunqing. Leave your coat. I looked at him, bewildered. He averted his gaze and said, My shirt is torn. It wouldn't be appropriate for the meeting later. Your suit jacket will suffice to cover. Now it made sense. There was indeed a very urgent video conference at 2 o'clock, and Pei Yunqing had to attend. I removed my coat and placed it on the back of a chair. Then I shall return to the company. Pei Yunqing responded with a low okay. I left without looking back. However, upon reaching the hotel lobby, I realized a pressing issue. Given our physical differences, and Pei Yunqing being significantly taller than I, my clothes would not fit him at all. If he discovered this at the last moment and ruined his image in front of our partners, my well-paying job would be thoroughly jeopardized. I resolutely redirected my path towards the nearest mall. Fortunately, there was a luxury brand that Pei Yunqing frequently wore. I swiftly purchased a complete set of formal wear, naturally charging it to the card he left with me for personal expenses. But just before exiting the mall, my peripheral vision caught sight of a toy store. The storefront description was blunt. It was a shop specializing in plush toys for those in their nesting period, soft and fluffy in appearance. I couldn't help but think of Pei Yunqing, who exuded such a despondent aura, longing for a comforting embrace. By the time I regained my senses, I found myself cradling a plush bunny adorned with a pink scarf. It was indeed soft, perhaps even comparable to a real one. I truly was a diligent subordinate who knew how to win the boss's favor. As I walked back to the hotel, I stood once more at the door of room 2203, and before I could knock, the door swung open halfway. Before I could ponder how Pei Yunqing knew it was me, he inquired, Why are you back? His voice was hoarse, tinged with an elusive restlessness. I quickly handed him the suit and the toy. President Pei, I realized our sizes differ, so I went to buy a new set. This toy was a complimentary gift from the store. Pei Yunqing raised an eyebrow as he accepted the suit, placing it on the table, while the toy was tossed onto the bed. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. It wasn't until he turned and approached me that I finally understood the issue. Earlier, Pei Yunqing had looked somewhat presentable, but now, in his disheveled state, I could detect a unique scent in the air. My ears flushed crimson. This was entirely too much. I took a step back, averting my gaze. President Pei, please return my clothes to me. If there's nothing else, I will take my leave. Pei Yunqing responded quickly. I got a bit sweaty while trying it on. I'll wash it and return it to you. There's nothing else, you should head back. With that, he closed the door without waiting for my reply. I had no time to question, only catching a glimpse of my suit draped over the sofa, its collar stained. The once pristine fabric bore the remnants of a white substance. My face flushed as I shook my head. What was I thinking? This was Pei Yunqing, a renowned figure in the industry. I returned to the company, diligently preparing materials for the afternoon meeting. Fortunately, the new suppressants worked wonders, and Pei Yunqing appeared completely unfazed during the video conference. Unfortunately, my dizziness intensified at that moment. Before I could take a moment to rest, Pei Yunqing's call came through. You've worked hard today. You'll have 3 days of paid leave. My eyes sparkled with delight. I could hardly contain my eagerness to rush home, yet I maintained a composed fa President Pei, about the resort project. Before I could finish, I was interrupted. There is a slight issue with the resort. Let's not concern ourselves with it for now. You, however, looked pale when you delivered the suppressants today. Take care of yourself. Listen well. I'll grant you an extra month's salary upon your return. The call ended. I touched my slightly warm ear. Why did the call feel like it had a static charge? But suddenly intensified pain seized my attention. I rubbed my temples, deciding to head home to rest. After 3 days off, my symptoms finally subsided, allowing me to return to the company. Yet as I entered the tea room, a colleague intercepted me. Ling assistant, I heard President Pei spent this sensitive period at the hotel with you? My heart skipped a beat, and I suppressed the urge to inquire further. Yet, I couldn't help but think of Pei Yunqing's unusual choices during this sensitive period. Had the protagonist already made an appearance? I lowered my gaze to fill my cup with water. That's President Pei's private matter. My colleague leaned in excitedly, whispering, "Isn't it widely believed that President Pei will eventually?" I quickly raised my head, looking her straight in the eye. Be cautious with your words. My relationship with President Pei is strictly professional. After I found that beautifully scripted notebook chronicling a romantic story, I resolved never to become a part of the protagonist's narrative. I intended to elaborate further, but my colleague pinched her nose and took a step back. Suddenly, Pei Yunqing's deep voice resonated. Lingyan, come to my office. I quickly grabbed my coffee and followed him. Pei Yunqing pointed at the documents before him. Please gather the recruitment status of the management trainees and report back in an hour. I nodded in confusion. It was well known that Pei Yunqing typically focused on the company's broader direction and rarely delved into personnel matters. Unusual occurrences often heralded something extraordinary. The boss has spoken, and I am left with no choice but to comply. Half an hour later, having meticulously categorized and printed the resumes provided by the HR department, I delivered them into Pei Yunqing's hands. Each resume barely lingered in his gaze for a fleeting second, just enough time for him to discern the name. However, isn't the essence of reviewing resumes to understand the candidate's educational backgrounds and skill sets? My confusion was swiftly dispelled when Pei Yunqing extracted one particular resume from the stack and handed it to me, stating, notify him to report for work tomorrow as the assistant to the president's office. You will personally guide him. My breath hitched as I glanced down at the resume. Lu Yu, male, graduated from country. Despite having anticipated Pei Yunqing's destined arrival for some time, the moment it became a reality, I found myself engulfed in bewilderment. Surely, it must be the reluctance to part with a high-paying job and a conscientious employer. I composed myself and dialed the number on the resume. Hello? Is this Lu Yu? Congratulations on your acceptance. Please contact me upon your arrival at the Pei Group headquarters tomorrow at 9 to complete your onboarding. A warm voice responded from the other end. Thank you. I will be there. After hanging up, I mindlessly pinched my palm, only regaining awareness when a colleague knocked on the door, discovering that my palm had already broken skin. At 9 the following day, Lu Yu appeared punctually. Following protocol, I escorted him to the HR department for registration. However, as soon as we entered the HR office, we were intercepted by Manager Lu, who, with an ambiguous expression, leaned in to inquire, Ahem, I heard you've been with the boss these past 3 days? Before I could respond, Lu Yu interjected from behind, Hello, Manager Lu, I am Lu Yu starting today. I turned to look, and the smile that had adorned Lu Yu's face since our meeting faded, his eyes darkening. My heart sank. Was this the plot twist that would cast me as the supporting character in a beautiful love story? I hurriedly clarified, You misunderstand. President Pei did not spend the sensitive period with me. Moreover, President Pei has always been fond of. As my words trailed off, Lu Yu's expression grew increasingly peculiar. Thankfully, perceptive Manager Lu quickly grasped the situation. I must have misunderstood. Let us just forget this matter. Liu, please follow me. The onboarding registration proceeded smoothly, and I took Lu Yu to the president's office to familiarize him with his duties. After assigning seats, the internal line rang, and Pei Yunqing's slightly distorted voice echoed. Bring Lu Yu to my office. I bit my lip and softly replied, Yes, President Pei. Upon entering the office, Pei Yunqing gestured for me to leave. I nodded and returned to my position, feeling for the first time that the Arabic numerals on my phone screen, representing time, were advancing at a painfully slow pace. Yet, life must continue. I sighed, casting aside my chaotic thoughts, and immersed myself in the myriad of tasks at hand. After an indeterminate span of time, Pei Yunqing stood before me, Lu Yu by his side. He extended a long hand, offering me the car keys. Lu Yu is someone very important to me. My grip on the car keys tightened suddenly, my knuckles whitening. Understood. He continued, You will drive my car and take Lu Yu home first. I acquiesced, preparing to escort Lu Yu home but froze when he revealed his address. Lu Yu lived next door to Pei Yunqing. Lingyi. I was just lost in thought. Let us go. Half an hour later, we arrived at the destination. Lu Yu unbuckled his seatbelt and inquired, Thank you, Lingu. Would you care to join me for a cup of tea? Perhaps the heat of the day had clouded my judgment. Inexplicably, I agreed. Lu Yu invited me to sit on the sofa while he went to prepare the tea. Instinctively, I scanned the surroundings and spotted familiar items. The soiled suit from 3 days prior hung forlornly on the balcony, swaying gently in the breeze. A pink scarf and a rabbit toy lay sprawled on a nearby shelf. I bit my tongue, the pain snapping my mind into rapid motion. Perhaps it was merely a similar suit, a similar toy. Surely I was mistaken. Yet, all self-deception crumbled in the face of Lu Yu's revelation. Oh, he asked me to return your clothes as well. Who he was all too evident. Stiffly, I accepted the clothing and departed. Once home, I sat on the sofa for an extended period, my fingers unconsciously tracing the collar of the suit repeatedly. Raising my hand to my nose, the fragrance enveloped me. I had detected this aroma beside Lu Yu. Sweet, lingering, akin to cherry wine. It was unlike President Pei. Even the most carefully selected perfume could not mask the essence of his inherent blandness and tedium. I couldn't help but smile wryly. Ever since I learned of the plot, I had buried my feelings for Pei Yunqing, wary of overstepping boundaries. I had believed I could endure until Pei Yunqing found happiness. Yet now, merely a coat and a scent had rendered me utterly undone. My gaze turned vacant as I stared ahead, only snapping back to reality when the phone rang. "Are you home?" It was Pei Yunqing. I bit my lip. Does President Pei have other arrangements? I can return to the office immediately. Pei Yunqing chuckled lightly. "No need. I called to inform you that you will accompany me this weekend for discussions with the Wu family regarding the resort. You should take a good rest." A sense of emptiness welled within me. I blinked away the impending tears, replying softly, "Understood, President Pei." The line went dead with a series of beeps, and I extinguished the screen, tossing the suit into the trash bin. Perhaps it was indeed time to depart. This hypothesis was soon validated. Pei Yunqing included Lu Yu in the president's office workgroup. "Everyone, please expedite the handover of the resort project materials to Lu Yu." My fingers hovered over the keyboard for an eternity, ultimately typing just a solitary OK. Yet, before I could organize the materials, a colleague, Xiao Su, sent a message. "Lingo, what does President Pei mean? Haven't you always been in charge of the resort? Why suddenly hand it over to Assistant Lu? He just started. Who will claim the final bonus? This feels awfully like a betrayal." Reading through the lines of discontent, a bitter sensation engulfed me. Even Xiao Su, whom I had nurtured for 2 years, recognized the repercussions of such a handover, let alone Pei Yunqing. I lowered my gaze, wiping the screen dry, and replied, "Enough. Retract that message quickly. Follow President Pei's instructions." Xiao Su sent a series of dragon emoji to vent his frustration before finally retracting his message. I silently tossed my phone aside, opened my computer, and packaged the project materials to send to Lu Yu. Simultaneously, I drafted my resignation letter, yet I refrained from submitting it immediately. After all, submitting it now would invite Pei Yunqing's inquiries. It would be best to wait until he was too occupied to notice me. The next 4 days I continued my work as usual. The only discomfort stemmed from witnessing Lu Yu emerge from the passenger seat beside Pei Yunqing each day. Fortunately, the logistics of moving out diverted my attention. Time slipped by, and on Friday afternoon, Pei Yunqing summoned me into his office. "Sit. I've heard the rumors circulating. Ling, and don't overthink it. Your bonus will remain intact. My reasons for taking Lu Yu are different." I nodded. "President Pei, you worry too much. It's all for the company." Noticing my indifferent response, Pei Yunqing furrowed his brow, reiterating several times, "You are always my top priority. Rest assured, no one can surpass you." I let his words flow in one ear and out the other, smiling in acknowledgement. Regardless of how grandly he spoke, I knew Pei Yunqing had made his choice. From here on, the outcome could only be 0 or countless repetitions. The narrative was thus. It was impossible to resist the allure of fate. I cast a deep glance at Pei Yunqing before returning to my workstation. As I exited the building, night had fallen. Yet, this did not deter my resolve to leave the city that very night and return to my hometown. On the train, I severed ties with everyone and meticulously tallied my personal assets. It is rather pleasant, relying solely on interest without engaging in work. I could sustain myself for at least 3 years. At 1 o'clock in the morning, I finally arrived at my family home in the small town. After hastily arranging the bedroom, I succumbed to a deep sleep almost uncontrollably. This slumber, however, was not peaceful. The fluctuating temperatures left me drenched in sweat. To make matters worse, before 6 o'clock, urgent knocking resounded from outside the door. Shaking my groggy head, I approached the door and inquired, "Who is it?" Through the peephole, I glimpsed a gaunt man clutching a bottle of wine. "Are you the new neighbor who just moved in?" "It smells delightful," he remarked. As soon as he finished speaking, the knocking resumed. A faint fragrance wafted past my nose. Could the perfume be this persistent to mask the odor of smoke in the house? Frowning, I raised my voice. "If this continues, I will call the police." The gaunt man muttered to himself as he ascended the stairs. A sense of unease surged within me. Indeed, within a single day, I encountered this gaunt man a total of 3 times. The intense feeling of discomfort compelled me to contact the real estate agent and purchase a sufficiently safe and convenient apartment in the city, which I could move into in a week. However, this decision significantly depleted my savings. I sighed. I could not afford to squander my resources. Yet, the prospect of continuing to toil like a beast was not what I desired. After much deliberation, I resolved to embark on a self-media venture with minimal costs. Coincidentally, cat videos were all the rage. I thought to use this medium to document my 9-year-long infatuation with Pei Yun-ching, which began in college. Without hesitation, I set about crafting the script, drawing from my memories. In truth, Pei Yun-ching and I had never exchanged a word during our high school years. After all, the third-year students, immersed in academic pursuits, had no time to spare for a second-year student like me, whose grades languished at the bottom. Yet, by a twist of fate, I held immense gratitude towards him. It was the second summer after my parents' tragic car accident, and my grades had plummeted. Teachers, classmates, and relatives took turns providing me with psychological counseling. Your parents are gone. You need to strive harder. I know you are in pain, but this is a crucial moment. Do not dwell on your parents. Focus on improving your grades. My academic performance continued to decline. Gradually, my suffering and struggles became mere fodder for others' idle chatter. One day, in front of the bulletin board displaying exam results, I overheard a conversation. What a disgrace to his parents. It's not like he can't survive, yet he performs like this. He seems rather inexplicable. Goodness, is he trying to attract attention on purpose? Just as I was about to defend myself, a cold-faced handsome boy reprimanded from a distance. Is it truly commendable to make light of someone else's suffering? Why not try it yourself? Let's see if you can rebound and surpass my exam scores. Later, I learned that it was Pei Yun-ching who spoke up for me. From that moment on, no one offered me special concern. Even the relatives, who clamored to become my guardians, vanished entirely. Out of curiosity, I investigated further. I discovered that the head of my grade had specially assisted me in applying for legal aid through a collaboration between Pei's group and the school due to my unique circumstances. I wished to express my gratitude in person, but the head of the grade said, "There's no need for that. You were simply fortunate." This year, Pei's charity project has been particularly focused on this area. With a heart full of gratitude, I gradually emerged from my sorrow. However, catching up on my missed studies proved to be a formidable task. Fortunately, the compensation funds left by my parents were sufficient for tutoring, though the resources for reputable educators were extremely scarce. With a mindset of giving it a try, I contacted a tutoring agency. 3 days later, I received a call. "Is this Lingyan? You are quite lucky. Teacher Lee has just finished teaching a top-tier class and is available for one-on-one tutoring, although the fee is relatively high at 120 yuan per hour." I leapt with excitement. This price was a rare gem in the tutoring industry. However, when I arrived at the agency to pay for the class, I was informed, "Lingyan, you don't need to pay, as our boss reviewed your submitted information and believes your foundation is quite solid. You will undoubtedly achieve excellent results and become our agency's shining star." How fortunate I was. Every day since I met Pei Yun-ching had been filled with good fortune. After diligently studying, I eventually passed a year and secured admission to the same university and major as Pei Yun-ching. Upon confirming my acceptance, I perused the school forum, where Pei Yun-ching, as the top student in our major, garnered significant attention. I effortlessly acquired his personal information and club affiliations from the main thread, preparing to seek opportunities to approach him. I made sure to like every comment that praised him. However, on the day of enrollment, my penchant for liking posts led to an utter social catastrophe in front of him. Seriously, which university mandates that students register for their forum accounts using their real names? Moreover, registration had to be completed on the very day of enrollment. The most distressing part was that it was Pei Yun-ching who assisted me with the registration. He lowered his gaze, a smirk playing at the corners of his lips, as he read aloud my record of likes. "Wants to be Pei Yun-ching's dog." My head spun with dizziness. Is that something one can say? My mind raced as I attempted to explain that it was a mere accidental touch. But who accidentally touches 100 posts in succession? The embarrassment made me wish to burrow into a hole. Thankfully, Pei Yun-ching did not pursue the matter further, swiftly completing the registration before taking my oversized suitcase and heading towards the dormitory. I bit my lip and hurried to catch up. "Senior, let me handle it. The suitcase is a bit heavy." Pei Yun-ching abruptly halted, and I collided with his shoulder, seeing stars. Was he made of iron? So solid. Before I could regain my composure, Pei Yun-ching raised his hand and gently wiped the beads of sweat from my nose with a soft tissue. "I am more than happy to assist you." My head spun even more, and I could only nod dumbly as I followed him. Seizing this opportunity, I confidently approached Pei Yun-ching under the guise of expressing my gratitude. He would bring me meals, we would study together during breaks, and in the evenings, amidst the couples in the playground, he would only drink the water I brought for him. I began to think that perhaps he harbored some feelings for me. What truly solidified my resolve to confess was a club gathering. Shortly after we sat down, the restaurant erupted into chaos. My tablemates, affected by an unexpected onset of sensitivity, exhibited varying degrees of stress responses. As a member of the group, I was supposed to be a pillar of support, but just as I stood up, darkness enveloped me, and I uncontrollably fell into unconsciousness. My last memory was of Pei Yunqing's anxious, worried face. When I awoke, I found myself in a private hospital under Pei's family's care. Pei Yunqing leaned in close, our foreheads touching, his warm breath brushing against my nose. I hastily averted my gaze, my face flushed crimson. You finally have your fever down. The doctor said you fainted due to the effects as well. But I am a member of the group. Pei Yunqing pinched my cheek. Fortunately, there are no lasting effects. Don't worry. Even if there were, it wouldn't matter, for I will always be here. In that instant, my heart raced like a drum, my mind a blur, and all thoughts of questioning were completely cast aside. After being discharged from the hospital, I eagerly began preparing for my confession. But my plans were abruptly interrupted by a notebook that fell into my lap. This notebook chronicled the sweet, tumultuous love story between the top student of the senior year and his pursuer, who was as elusive as a bird in flight. The senior was pursuing a major in finance, and his family's considerable assets necessitated inheritance, aligning perfectly with Pei Yunqing. Initially, I found it hard to believe this so-called plot, until the events described within the book began to unfold before my eyes. Yet, I clung to a glimmer of hope, unwilling to let go. However, the harsh reality soon shattered my illusions. After class, I habitually sought out Pei Yunqing for lunch, but as I reached the corridor, I was intercepted. Ling, wait a moment. Someone is looking for Brother Pei. I paused in confusion, only to be met with a confession resounding in my ears. Brother Pei, I like you, even though I am not. Before the words could fully escape her lips, she was cruelly interrupted by Pei Yunqing's cold indifference. I do not like anyone. I apologize. In an instant, I felt as though I had plunged into an icy abyss, my fingertips tingling and rendered immobile, while the images from my notebook flashed through my mind like a revolving lantern. The protagonist's greatest aversion is to those who harbor ulterior motives towards him. I finally resigned myself to fate, curbing my thoughts, and ceased my attempts to cultivate intimacy, gradually creating distance and quietly assuming the role of the protagonist's small attendant. Coupled with Pei Yunqing's indifference towards my presence, this only solidified my suspicions of the reality at hand. However, when faced with Pei Yunqing's invitation to work together, I could not contain myself. I found myself yearning, like a moth to a flame, to catch a glimpse of him, intending to flee the moment the opportunity arose. My memory faltered at this juncture. I sighed, retracting my thoughts, hastily completing the vague details of the script, editing the video, and uploading it to my alternate account. To my surprise, the video garnered unexpected attention, going viral. Following this, my inbox was flooded with countless private messages. One stood out in particular. Ling Gu, it's me. Xiao Su, why did you delete me too? Boo-hoo. I'm not like that scummy man. How did she discover this? I was perplexed as I accepted Xiao Su's request, and before I could inquire further, a barrage of messages followed. After you left without a word, President Pei turned into a ticking time bomb. He snapped at anyone in sight, even berating your beloved succulent as useless for failing to retain people. If Assistant Liu hadn't intervened, it would have been unbearable. The fluttering excitement in my heart dissipated, returning to a state of quietude. I typed back, "How did you find me?" Xiao Su's response came swiftly, Gu. Yet, something felt amiss, though I could not pinpoint exactly what. As she transitioned to other topics, I reluctantly cast aside my confusion. This is bad. President Pei wants me to accompany him on a business trip the day after tomorrow. To save my skin, you must tell me his pet peeves. I opened my keyboard, ready to respond, but after typing just 2 words, I faltered. Whenever I traveled with Pei Yunqing, he always acquiesced with "it's all up to you." I racked my brain for a suitable reply, ultimately sending a simple, "just remember to bring the materials." After a long pause, Xiao Su replied with a single word of acknowledgement. I refrained from probing further, focusing on preparing the next video. It was not until the late hours that the previously dormant plot notebook fell heavily into my lap once more. To my astonishment, the storyline, which had halted at the protagonist's dangerous banquet encounter, had progressed. The protagonist had fled. No wonder Pei Yunqing was so eager to travel. It seemed he was off to capture someone. I let out a bitter smile, fixating on the word "flee" for an extended moment. Ultimately, I embraced the notebook and retreated beneath the covers, allowing sorrow to envelop me completely. Yet life must go on. After a day of melancholy, I resolved to revitalize my spirits by selecting furniture for my new home. After placing a decisive order, I returned home laden with snacks. However, as I reached the ground floor, I was intercepted by a gaunt man. His bulbous nose twitched as he inquired, "Why the lack of scent?" I subtly distanced myself, replying, "Step aside." The gaunt man flashed an unsettling grin and leaned closer. "You're single, right? The other day you reeked of pheromones? Were you trying to entice me?" What a lunatic. I am merely someone who wears perfume. I refused to engage further, shoving him aside and sprinting back home. Only after confirming he had not followed did I breathe a sigh of relief. Regrettably, I had intended to dine at a renowned hot pot restaurant that evening, which would have to wait. I sighed and began scrolling through short videos. Time slipped away, and outside, the sky was painted with the hues of dusk. I patted my rumbling stomach, preparing to order takeout when a series of heavy knocks echoed at the door. My heart sank, and I tensed, stealthily approaching the door. I heard a familiar, restrained voice. "Ling In, open the door." Oh no, hadn't Pei Yunqing gone to capture someone? Why was he here? "We need to discuss your resignation," Pei Yunqing reiterated with another knock. I scoffed. "President Pei, my resignation letter is quite clear. I feel my job has encroached upon my personal life, hence my desire to take a break. There is nothing more to discuss." After a prolonged silence, he finally asked, laden with grievance, "And what about me? I've liked you for 10 years. You left without a word. Do you not want me anymore?" Wait, every word I understood, yet I could not fathom their meaning as they escaped his lips. What did he mean by liking me for a decade? What did it mean to not want him? Hadn't the plot indicated he and Lu Yu had completed their marking and were now pursuing each other? Yet before I could ponder this further, Pei Yunqing continued his lament. "In university, you said you wanted to save enough money before considering a relationship, rejecting everyone. After entering the workforce, you claimed not to want to date for the time being, and I continued to wait. What fault do I bear for simply liking you? I could no longer endure this. How long ago were these events?" I flung open the door. "What?" Yet, I collided with Pei Yunqing's dark, brooding gaze, sending a chill down my spine. By the time I regained my senses, he had seized my wrist and stepped inside. The door closed behind us, plunging the backlit room into darkness. His rough fingers pried apart my tightly sealed lips. "I've caught you, baby." I jolted, stumbling backward only to trip over the sofa and fall. This not only failed to create distance but also provided Pei Yunqing with the opportunity to overpower me. His scorching hands gripped my cheeks, compelling me to utter incoherent sounds. "Pei Yunqing, what are you doing?" The response to my inquiry was the sudden proximity of his breath, warm and heavy against my neck. "Baby, do you know? Those who misbehave will be bullied." The sweet scent of amber enveloped me, leaving me dizzy, my ears flushed, and my entire being aflame. What brazen words! How could such things be said? Infuriated, I raised my knee to push Pei Yunqing away, yet I had forgotten the disparity in our sizes and strengths. He forcefully restrained me, rendering me immobile. My anger escalated. I attempted to kick him again. "Get off." But he captured my ankle, securing it against his waist. Simultaneously, a sharp pain pierced my neck. No running. I struggled to maintain my weakening form, slapping Pei Yunqing's back. However, my feeble retaliation felt more like a reward. He grew more fervent, taking several bites. The scent of amber intensified in the air, and my mind became increasingly hazy. Ultimately, I could no longer hold on, and my consciousness faded into darkness. Upon awakening, the room was empty. Could it have been a dream? Yet, upon seeing the red marks on my neck in the mirror, I was assured that everything had indeed transpired. Anger bubbled within me. Did that dog leave the mess behind and run away? Bang, bang, bang. At least he returned. I scoffed and swiftly opened the door. "You?" My words faltered as the figure outside was not Pei Yunqing, but the gaunt man who had previously harassed me. My pupils constricted, and I hurried to shut the door, but it was too late. A sudden, acrid odor filled the air, rendering me weak. What on earth was happening? I squeezed my palm, the pain sharpening my awareness, and seized a teacup to hurl at the gaunt man. Blood dripped as he lunged at me in fury. Just before contact, a pair of hands seized the gaunt man's hair, violently throwing him aside. The stench was quickly masked by the scent of amber. I collapsed to the ground, unable to sustain myself. In the twilight of my consciousness, I heard Pei Yunqing's concerned voice. "Is it 120? Yes, it has differentiated again. We are at." When I awoke, all I could see was white. The unbearable heat was driving me to madness. From within, I was drenched in clammy, sticky liquid, unable to contain myself. A sense of grievance and unease surged within me. Where was Pei Yunqing? Fortunately, a fully equipped nurse arrived promptly. The chilling suppressant coursed through my veins, quelling the restlessness with simplicity. She measured my temperature and said, "Mr. Ling, you are currently undergoing secondary differentiation." I nodded with great difficulty. She continued, "Your secondary differentiation is delayed to such an extent that its intensity far exceeds that of others. There are two paths before you. One is to endure with a minimal amount of suppressant and sheer willpower. The other is for your temporary marking by your." Before I could respond, she pressed a switch, and the curtains parted. Through the glass, I caught sight of Pei Yunqing, his face etched with concern. A flicker of emotion stirred within me. "May I speak with the person outside?" I inquired. The nurse nodded and dialed the number using my phone. I gasped, breathless, as I asked Pei Yunqing, "Is it possible?" My sentence was abruptly interrupted. "No, you cannot be marked." I froze, tears welling in my eyes. Without a second thought, I ended the call. "Please continue administering the suppressant." For a full 3 days, I drifted through a haze. It was not until the evening of the 4th day that I saw Pei Yunqing again, sitting by my bedside, peeling an apple. I averted my gaze. "Thank you, Mr. Pei, I'm fine now, you should return." No sooner had the words left my lips than a sharp clatter reached my ears. Following the sound, I realized it was the fruit knife falling to the floor. Turning back, I noticed blood oozing from his fingertip. He chuckled softly, "Darling, could you refrain from sending me away?" I harbored reasonable doubts about Pei Yunqing's display of vulnerability, yet the words I had prepared twisted unexpectedly in my mind. "Do as you please. Hurry and stop the bleeding. Get a tetanus shot." Pei Yunqing nodded and stepped outside. I sighed and reclined, finally able to contemplate the chaotic nature of our relationship. However, before I could arrive at any conclusions, a tremor emanated from the locker. Instinctively, I propped myself up to see Pei Yunqing's phone vibrating. The screen lit up, revealing 2 messages. "Yuyo? Where are you? Yuyo? Didn't we agree that you would be mine?" The latter message was cut off. I suppressed the urge to reach out and lay back down with an impassive expression. Was the Pei Yunqing under the narrative's control genuinely sincere? What was this secondary differentiation all about? I found myself utterly perplexed. An overpowering sense of fatigue enveloped me. I stared blankly out the window, resolved that when Pei Yunqing returned, I would clarify everything and then part ways, each to our own. Pei Yunqing returned to the ward, his hand wrapped in bandages. I gestured to the seat beside me. "We need to talk." He obediently sat down. I was eager to ask questions but was at a loss for where to begin. Sensing my confusion, he took the initiative. "Let me explain. However, I must clarify one thing. I have liked you since 10 years ago, and I still do." My cheeks flushed, and I cleared my throat. "But you have Lu Yuyo, don't you?" Pei Yunqing appeared momentarily stunned. Then a look of realization dawned on him. "That's my brother, my full-blooded sibling. He just returned to the country to escape a lunatic who couldn't keep his wife, and I've been tasked with protecting him for the time being." His eyes sparkled with excitement as he continued, "Darling, you misunderstood me and became jealous? Do you perhaps have a smidge of affection for me?" I lowered my gaze in silence. Yet, he eagerly pulled out a photo of the household registration book from his phone's album for me to see. I stared in disbelief. Who takes a photo of their household registration book to store in an album? Pei Yunqing rubbed his nose sheepishly. "I thought, just in case you ever agree to marry me. But I pointed out you need the original for that. What use is a photograph? Furthermore, I may like you, but what have I agreed to?" Pei Yunqing's expression shifted from amusement to feigned grievance, his eyes pleading as he gazed at me. "I've liked you for 10 years, and you won't even give me a chance to pursue you. Can't I at least dream about it?" I was at a loss for words. "Don't speak nonsense. I suggested a temporary marking, and you were reluctant to do so, acting all virtuous. If he truly cared for me, why would he refuse?" I turned my face away, unable to look at him, my heart bubbling with bitterness. But in the next moment, he forcefully turned my face back, compelling me to meet his gaze. His expression was serious. "Do you remember fainting during a university gathering?" I nodded. Pei Yunqing continued, "The examination results indicated that you showed signs of secondary differentiation. However, the signs were too faint for the doctor to predict the timing of the differentiation. He also warned me that if you were marked during this secondary differentiation, you would develop a dependency and be controlled by the pheromones, becoming unable to part from that person." I parted my lips, yet no words emerged. He smiled gently. "I did consider forcibly keeping you, but I would prefer for you to love me. I apologize for my previous harshness." Memories of everything that transpired on the couch flooded back, and my face burned with embarrassment. "Enough." I hastily changed the subject. Regarding the matter of saving money, I admit I brought it up, but I never said I wouldn't consider. Pei Yunqing remained silent, merely widening his eyes to gaze at me. Guilt compelled me to reflect on the past. Conversations long neglected in the corners of my mind resurfaced. It was during that fainting incident, after witnessing the plot unravel, that the doctor had called back to suggest I find a partner. I had replied, I wouldn't consider anyone. But that wasn't my fault. It was all the narrative's doing. Wait, speaking of the narrative, Pei Yunqing's current actions completely contradicted the story. I seized Pei Yunqing's arm. You're coming home with me. I have questions for you. I handed him the narrative notebook I had hidden in the drawer, signaling for him to read it from cover to cover. He looked at me with a mix of exasperation and curiosity. Darling, is there even a possibility that this person is not me? I frowned and flipped the notebook to the first page. How could that be? Aren't you in the 2046 class of the major in finance? Pei Yunqing sighed, rubbing his forehead. There happens to be a student in the 2046 finance graduate class who is also in the same class. I felt a jolt of disbelief. Could it be that I had truly misjudged? I pressed on, but the timing of your studies abroad and you're taking over the company. Pei Yunqing cut me off, raising a finger to my lips. The other student coincidentally follows the same timeline as me. I hesitated for a moment, wanting to mention how much he enjoyed eating cilantro, which I liked. He seemed to read my thoughts, pointing to that page in the notebook. I have a mild allergy to cilantro. Every time I eat a little, my neck turns red. But you adore it, darling, so I can only love you along with it. I blinked in confusion, recalling that Pei Yunqing indeed would often leave quickly after eating cilantro. His neck and face flushed. Oh no, but Pei Yunqing wasn't finished. He pulled out his phone and tapped a few times. The screen displayed an incoming video call with Wu Lin. Connected swiftly, and Lu Yuyo's face flashed by. What was happening? Soon, a disheveled Wu Lin appeared on the screen. What's going on? I suddenly recalled the rumors. Wu Lin, the president of the Wu Corporation, was also in the same class. Pei Yunqing shot me a glance and quickly explained everything. Wu Lin nodded in understanding, addressing me. That is indeed the case. My timeline aligns almost perfectly with Mr. Pei's, but the difference is that I enjoy cilantro. Clicked into place. Everything lined up perfectly. Once the call ended, I instinctively shrank back, murmuring, I misunderstood. I had expected Pei Yunqing to seize the moment to tease me. Instead, he knelt on one knee before me. I love you. Can you be with me this time? I bent down and plunged into his embrace. All right, then can we register our marriage tomorrow? I'll have Xiao Su send over the household registration book. So he has been waiting for me here. However, after missing Pei Yunqing for 10 years, I no longer wish to wait. Fine, we'll go to register as soon as the household registration book arrives. Epilogue. Pei Yunqing. Lingyan says we have known each other for 10 years, but that is not accurate. It has actually been 11. I first spotted him amidst the crowd on the first day of high school. Yet, when I mustered the courage to approach him, a classmate informed me that he had taken leave to return home due to the passing of his parents. From that moment on, I chose to silently stand by his side, whether it was dealing with the school's expulsion threats or the gossiping classmates, or the leech-like relatives who came to claim his inheritance. Fortunately, Lingyan is an incredibly resilient individual. He chose to repeat the year and attend extra classes. I intended to offer my services as his tutor, but my father discovered my feelings for him and forced me to join the family business. Only by becoming stronger could I protect Lingyan. I entered the company while simultaneously vetting reliable tutors to ensure they would be by Lingyan's side. At long last, we reunited in college, which I deemed a blessing from the heavens. The carefully crafted persona of a senior completely crumbled when Lingyan fainted. The doctor from the private hospital funded by the Pei family informed me that Lingyan had been stimulated by pheromones from the adjacent table and could potentially undergo secondary differentiation, with unpredictable timing and serious consequences. I suppressed this information, denying any opportunity for those pursuing Lingyan to catch up. Lingyan would remain by my side, and he could only be mine. Should he dare to flee, I would capture him, completely mark him, and confine him in the seaside villa I had long since prepared. Yet he truly did escape. A myriad of thoughts on how to force him to stay by my side flashed through my mind. However, after gathering information through subordinates, his chat records, background checks, and confirming his whereabouts, I ultimately softened my heart. Thankfully, the misunderstanding was resolved, and everything turned out perfectly. The end. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this, feel free to subscribe and give a thumbs up for support. Until we meet again in the next story.